This episode is sponsored by Jimmy and the Pulsating Mass.
Food that is not absorbed becomes waste and enters the pouch like cecum.
Who the hell is that? Howard Stern?
Okay, look, there's no subtle way to say this. I'm just gonna have to be upfront and, be a straight shooter with you guys. This is the doo-doo episode. There's going to be a lot of discussion of bowel problems. There's no other way around it, so if this is not your thing, just drop your like, give me $5, and get on out of here. However, I'm going to make an effort to keep this script as clean as I can, mostly because I like a challenge and this sounds rather fun. So I won't be saying the S word or even the POO word, alright? I really want this video to be appropriate for all ages because, as that classic children's book says, everybody bottom vomits. So usually a lot of credit is given to Mike Judge for his many roles and many hats that he wears throughout King of the Hill, but I want to give a big shout out to Greg Daniels here, who co-created the show's concept and was a writer-producer on a majority of the King of the Hill episodes. He also worked a lot on The Office, Parks and Recreation, and The Simpsons. He doesn't get enough praise, and I thought it would be appropriate to give him his due diligence here, as he seems to be Mike Judge's eternal number 2. Anyway, the episode begins with Peggy playing Boggle, already getting in some practice for an upcoming episode. After hearing that Luann is having problems with beauty school, Hank emerges from his porcelain throne.
You forgot to flush.
Didn't have to. Didn't do anything.
How long has this been going on?
There's nothing going on, Peg. That's the problem.
What's interesting here is that Hank is quick to admit that there is a problem, but the second Peggy shows even a slight showing of concern, he immediately backpedals and says, nope, actually there is no problem, don't worry about it. This causes Peggy to take an interest in whether Hank is voiding himself or not, which is a weird thing to do because she should really be worried about how pale she is. Look at this. Pale, then perfectly fine. Pale, then perfectly fine. Huh. In any case, I have to say, this is a rather laser-focused plot. There actually isn't a B-plot kicking around in the background to pull us away from this issue, which means that Peggy's insistence on helping Hank feels much more claustrophobic than maybe it would normally. She's pressuring him to drink supplements, eat oat muffins, and cut down on sausages, really doing anything she can to influence his diet. But it isn't even just Peggy that's concerned. Bobby himself is telling his dad to start taking care of his dietary tract.
You should eat those, Dad. They help you make.
Excuse me?
Huh?
I'm sorry, but the word make has got to be one of the worst euphemisms for a push that I've ever heard. Regardless of Bobby's disgusting lingo, he does reveal that Hank was attempting to use the bathroom for over an hour the night before. And I'll remind you, this was before cell phones, so Hank wasn't just losing himself in an endless stream of Instagram thirst traps or One Piece power scaling videos. He was in there putting in work. And you want to know something weird? Okay, maybe that's a dangerous question to ask in a video like this, but really, what's weird is that this is Nancy Gribble's first speaking role since the pilot episode. In fact, this is where we establish a lot of stuff about Nancy. We see that she and Peggy are on friendly terms, that Nancy is a weather girl, and that she tends to make, educated guesses.
He hasn't done his business in 4 days.
Good Lord, if I had to make an educated guess, I'd say he's got polio.
I also love the fact that Nancy feels compelled to tell Peggy that she's a weather girl, as if this is new information to Peggy, even though they've been living next to each other for years and their husbands are best friends. Exposition ho! From here, the news of Hank's situation starts to spread throughout the neighborhood, and what I think is important to note here is that people like Bill are bringing up Hank's uncooperative colon out of compassion and are not doing so to mock him.
Hank, it happens to everyone now and then. There's no reason to be embarrassed.
I mean, for God's sakes, the man hasn't ridden down the rough rapids in almost 4 days. That's nearly 100 hours with no activity at ground zero, and I think that any compassionate human being would be a bit concerned.
You know, I've been thinking about y'all and y'all dang old bottom and all what's gonna get moving again. I think y'all ought to go jogging and swimming in a water bunch, man. They're gonna be back having you pooping just like you used to, man. I know it's gonna work.
And even Dale, who normally relishes any opportunity to brutally mock his friends, comes in with some rather well-meaning advice, from discussing the benefits of squatting to, this little home remedy.
You take a spoonful of bacon grease.
I'm not eating bacon grease.
You didn't let me finish.
I'm not eating bacon grease.
So before we continue, let's address the central question of the episode. Is it all right for Peggy to be so pushy when it comes to Hank's problem? He is clearly super uncomfortable with what's going on and even begins to panic. If the shoe were on the other foot, well, okay, that's if Hank's shoe could somehow fit on Peggy's gigantic foot, then would this situation still be acceptable? And for the sake of argument, let's say that Peggy in this hypothetical situation is starting to forget things and is continually embarrassed that she's slipping. I mean, maybe she's alright, but maybe it's a sign of a stroke. We don't know. Would Hank then be justified in getting her to go to the doctor even if she's strongly against it? Now, there's two sides to this, as per usual. On the one hand, I do think that people should be allowed to make whatever choices they want with their own bodies, and that includes ignoring potential warning signs. Because if you aren't allowed to make your own decisions about your body, then others may force you into choices that aren't right for you or your personal preferences. However, there's also the consideration of how your health affects other people. Sometimes our personal hang-ups can cause larger problems for those around us, problems that could be solved with a little self-care. And speaking from personal experience, I have somebody in my life who absolutely refuses to go to a therapist to discuss their problems, which is fair enough, but they will often use me as a sounding board for their long-seated issues, which is not something that I am trained to do and does take an emotional toll on me. I might be in the process of earning a terminal degree, but that doesn't make me a doctor. In Hank's case, he just wants to ignore this and hope that things clear up on their own. And this is an interesting way to go, because I feel like if this were a more modern episode, the writers may have factored in the cost of going to the doctor, which is a massive concern for anyone wanting to entangle themselves within the American healthcare system. But in this case, cost seems to be a non-factor. It's all about how much embarrassment Hank can tolerate for the sake of his health. And normally I would say that no matter how embarrassing your problem is, you should definitely go to the doctor if you can. Best case scenario, they've seen what you've got a million times and they'll just fix you up right away and move on to the next patient. But in the worst case scenario, if we want to be real about this, then okay, you may find yourself starring in your own chapter of a medical textbook, but who doesn't want to be famous? Go, do it! Of course, that's just for a typical situation. This is definitely not normal. The level of humiliation that Hank is being put through is definitely, quite extreme.
I want to wish my friend Hank Hill a quick recovery for his embarrassing
Patient.
Duh!
And at this point, Peggy agrees to drop the issue and finally let Hank be. Which, then we immediately cut to a diner called Luli's Cafe, in which Hank orders, and I'm quoting here, skirt steak, brisket, New York steak, steak fingers, and a burger.
Oh, Hank, please have just one veggie.
Oh, all right. Put some macaroni and cheese on there, too.
Damn, if this is Hank's usual diet, then it's no wonder that the man's more backed up than a Steam user's game library. Sheesh. Something definitely has to be done, no question. This is eventually going to reach a critical mass, and I wouldn't want to be around when that dam finally breaks. So Peggy decides that the best course of action is to secretly give Hank laxative in his ice cream, presenting it as chocolate sauce. Okay, so while I think we're all pretty accepting of strange medicine being slathered over our food, Peggy does turn this innocent bit of undercover drug administration into colonic terrorism because she goes way overboard in how much she puts on Hank's ice cream. Here's an image of a regular chocolate laxative. The instructions say that adults should eat 2 pieces in one go, or perhaps as many as 4 in a single day. Meanwhile, here's Peggy's concoction, which has to be at least minimum 6 pieces altogether. And you might say, okay, well that's not so much of a big deal, right? But apparently it is possible to overdose on laxative, which can cause damage to the muscles in your Lemmy-Winks cave. So yeah, Hank's furious reaction is perfectly justified, although it is crazy that even after ingesting a few spoonfuls of this brew, Hank still isn't able to go. What the fuck? So yeah, at that point, he definitely does need to go to the doctor about this, because what the heck's going on? What? I can't believe it. Also, I love that while Hank walks away, Bobby decides to eat some of the leftovers of the ice cream. We don't get any follow-up to this, but I think it probably messed that poor kid up so bad that it set him up for that nightmarish encounter with the lutefisk in the future. Anyway, while Bobby is no doubt hugging his toilet, Peggy's worries begin to manifest themselves in this horrible dream, where Hank passes away, robbing them of the chance to ever speak about his problem and causing Peggy to start slacking on her homework.
Remember, early detection is the key. Now pass in your algebra homework.
What's even crazier about this scene is that this is like, I don't know, the 4th time that Hank's dad has been in a flashback or dream sequence, but he hasn't actually appeared physically in the show yet. No name drop, no nothing. He's just there, tormenting his son and casting his body into the bowels of the earth.
Goodbye, boy. See you in hell!
This late-night panic attack causes Peggy to do the unthinkable and actually touch Hank while he's on the toilet. Ugh. Awful, awful stuff. No wonder Hank finally agrees to go to the doctor, who will no doubt prescribe something less disturbing and more acceptable to Hank's comfort levels, like an exercise routine or a vigorous blumpkin. Once at the doctor's office, we see that Hank's practitioner is one of those super soft-spoken fellows that, to me anyway, always feels a little insincere about his feelings. One of those guys who goes overboard in trying to make you feel, comfortable. This even extends to letting Bobby handle the camera that will eventually venture into Hank's inner tube. What the fuck? Ugh. But I guess it's better to keep Bobby occupied, because when he's on his own, he causes some, strife.
We made it, honey. Quick, 6th floor maternity.
Oh, come on now. She was never gonna make it in time. That baby popped out in less than 10 seconds. Someone's really been going ham on their Kegels. Jeez. Anyway, Hank's getting explored, and it's weird that they don't actually find the enormous mass that's got him all clogged up. In a later episode, we'll see that there actually was a titanic turd stuck in there, but this expedition failed to find that monster. Who knew that those things were so good at hide and seek? Despite finding nothing, Hank's doctor goes so far as to recommend a surgical removal of Hank's colon. What the fuck? That seems like a rather extreme action. You know what's somehow more reasonable? Luann recommending Hank to go to an acupuncturist, which, might actually work. Peggy does transport Hank, without his knowledge somehow while he's sleeping, all the way to the acupuncturist, and he wakes up with smoking needles in his skin. And if that doesn't make you fill your pants out of shock, then nothing will. At least Hank finally gets to show that he's not all talk when it comes to the act of kicking asses. With his unnecessary and invasive surgery on the horizon, Hank is confined to his bathroom where he has to watch life pass him by. It's a rather apt metaphor for how our worries, no matter how valid they may be, can prevent us from enjoying the fullness of our existence. This is something that Peggy comes to realize when Nancy points out how Hank is so beaten down that he has given up everything that's made him happy. I know a lot of people can't stand Peggy for both right and wrong reasons, and believe me, we'll get to a broader discussion of her later, but here's a moment where she actively listens to Hank's feelings on the matter and tells him, you know what, you're right.
I'd rather die with a burger in my colon than live and eat faux foo.
I know, and it's okay, you're right.
What?
Well, I'm only doing this because I want you to be around as long as possible, because I love you. But I have to let you be you.
At the same time, Hank understands that Peggy is only doing all of this because she cares about him and doesn't want him to die. It's an extremely rare moment of complete openness from Hank, and he even cries in his wife's arms. And perhaps it's this openness of mind and spirit that finally unleashes all of his pent-up demons, because here's where, finally, Hank is able to go to the bathroom and bask in the glory of, no doubt, ruining their toilet forever with his 5-day time bomb. I never thought that I could be so invested in whether or not someone would defecate, but that's what good writing can really do. Set up the stakes, get us invested in how this is going to be resolved, and end with a big emotional dump. And even better than that dump, the episode ends with Hank Hill himself addressing the audience directly, apologizing for the brief nudity that was featured in the show.
You can believe me when I tell you the Fox executives were pushing for a whole lot more.
Gosh, Hank is becoming so three-dimensional that he's starting to break through to the real world. That's how you know you've got yourself a strong character.
Now, as an actor, I only do nudity when I feel the script warrants it.
I wish we'd gotten a little bit more of these direct-to-camera speeches at the end of episodes. They're just so great and so well done. So how do I feel about this episode, titled Hank's Unmentionable Problem? Well, honestly, I'm damned impressed that they were even allowed to air something like this, no matter how it turned out. On the surface, it sounds like the worst story pitch ever. Oh, Hank can't fill his toilet and everybody pitches in to help. I mean, whoa! But thankfully, the writers handle the subject with a degree of dignity and grace, one that treats the subject as a true medical emergency, even if it's one that happens to be about an action that most people do in private. It's smart, compassionate, and best of all, refined.
Bobby, put that down. You do not know where it's been, honey.
For the most part. Oh, and this is totally off topic, but right now I'm going through and watching Star Trek Enterprise, and there's this little plot point in one of the episodes where the crew unknowingly offends some visiting aliens who practically throw up when they see the cafeteria. And it turns out that the aliens consider eating an extremely nauseating act, one that should be done in private. It would be like if we went into an alien ship and saw a whole room of people going to the bathroom together. No stalls, no nothing. Some of them even gathered around tables looking each other in the eyes as they do that doo-doo. At some point, I'm definitely going to start reviewing Star Trek episodes because, boy, is that one fertile show to discuss. But I have no time to pine for my beloved Star Trek. Instead, I have to buckle up and get ready for the next episode of King of the Hill, which is going to introduce my favorite character of the whole show, and it's going to do it in a way that, inspires a lot of discussion.
I am Khan Supanusimpon.
So that's pronounced Khan, right?
God, I can't wait to get into that shit. Oh, I said shit. Oh, I said poo-poo. Oh no, I'm sorry, kids. I almost got through the whole thing. I failed you. Shit. Ugh. Profanity aside, we can definitely say that this episode has indeed been reviewed to death. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.
Can I be a proctologist when I grow up?
Mr. Hill, I'm gonna have to ask you to relax your buttocks for me, please.